Tonight on Reporting Scotland, calls for Scotland's Chief Constable to go after another complaint about his conduct. The First Minister says strength of feeling in yesterday's Catalan independence referendum cannot be ignored. We'll be live in Barcelona. Also in the programme, the lottery gives £15 million for the refurbishment of the borough collection, but there are claims the redesign could spoil the building. The Scotland team limbers up for a big week, but the manager says they're in charge of their own destiny. And how much would you pay for a dram? This decanter of wartime whiskey is worth £30,000. Good evening. The Justice Minister who oversaw the creation of Police Scotland has called for its Chief Constable to resign. It follows another complaint against Phil Gormley, who's currently on special leave from the force. This latest allegation follows 3 earlier complaints of bullying, which are being independently investigated. Our Home Affairs correspondent, Reva Alderson, reports.
And that I will uphold
fundamental human rights.
Fundamental human rights.
Taking the oath in January last year, Phil Gormley looked forward to his new job as Chief Constable of Police Scotland.
This is without doubt the pinnacle of my professional career. I'm very, very pleased to be here. Thank you.
But for how long? He's still Chief Constable, but his 21 months in charge have raised new questions over the controversial reorganisation and his future. There are now 3 independent investigations against him, and news today of a 4th complaint. It was in July that a superintendent in the Chief Constable's office, Graham McInallen, alleged bullying against Mr Gormley. The next month, a female inspector also made an allegation to the Scottish Police Authority, and in September, Assistant Chief Constable Malcolm Graham made a 3rd complaint about bullying. All are now before the Independent Police Investigation and Review Commissioner. Today it's been confirmed a 4th allegation by a senior female civilian police official has been sent to the Scottish Police Authority. Some observers say that's enough, and Mr Gormley should now go.
Well, whatever the rights and wrongs about this latest complaint, I think the situation was becoming untenable for him. 1 or 2 were manageable, but the situation is the police are now suffering reputational damage. I think for the good of the Chief and for the good of the service, he should go gracefully.
At the Scottish Crime Campus, as across the country, the work of Police Scotland continues for the time being, without the Chief Constable at the helm. The Scottish Police Authority, which oversees the force, granted Mr Gormley special leave. It said it would review that after 4 weeks. That's up on Friday, when its options will be either extending the special leave, suspending Mr Gormley, or allowing him to return to work. The Police Authority, which will ultimately decide Mr Gormley's fate, is now being urged to end his special leave and suspend him.
We're in Orkney today. I wouldn't envisage it if the police sergeant Orkney was accused of these things, that people would say, go away home and mow your lawn. More robust action would have be taken. The opportunity comes to the police authority now to review the decision they made to afford Mr Gormley gardening leave. I think any logical assumption of that review would be that they move to suspend him.
But even this arch critic of police reorganisation is urging caution.
I don't think he should step down. I think it's right that he should step aside while the investigation is underway, and that's why I'm calling on the SPA, the Scottish Police Authority, to continue the period of leave while PERC do their job.
The Justice Secretary, attending a meeting at the Scottish Crime Campus, says he's been kept informed of latest developments, but says the investigatory process must be allowed to run its course. Reva Alderson, Reporting Scotland.
Scotland's referendum on independence was held after an agreement between the Scottish and UK governments. However, there are those who feel that any future referendum could be declared unilaterally. Well, such a vote went ahead in Catalonia at the weekend and resulted in violent clashes between voters and police acting on behalf of the Spanish government. Well, our reporter Niall O'Gallagher is in Barcelona. Now, our First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has spoken of the events in Barcelona and said that the strength of feeling expressed in Catalonia can't be ignored.
Well, yes, Jackie, and pro-independence supporters here have long called for a Scottish answer to the Catalan question of whether this region should remain part of Spain, but Madrid ruled out agreeing to a referendum and yesterday sent in the police to stop one. A yes vote was recorded early this morning, but the actions of the Spanish security forces here may prove to be more decisive. Scenes that have caused shock abroad and anger in Catalonia. Spanish police using force against Catalan voters, pulling people from polling stations to stop yesterday's referendum on independence. They failed. People waited in the rain to have their say in a vote that Spain says was illegal. The Scottish Parliament's former presiding officer was among those watching.
This isn't about independence. This is about the right to vote. That is what all the slogans are, the right to vote. All people want to do is vote. That is fundamental in a democracy.
When the polls closed, doors were barricaded shut to prevent the National Police from seizing the ballot boxes. They stayed shut while the votes were counted. Once the local tally was known, the doors reopened and the now empty ballot boxes were held aloft for the awaiting crowd. By early morning, the result was clear. Those who took part overwhelmingly backed independence, but Madrid insists the vote was illegal and won't respect the result. Now the government here in Barcelona looks to Europe to sanction Spain and uphold their claims to statehood. The First Minister offered her cautious support.
What the international community cannot do, in my view, is ignore the strength of feeling that was expressed yesterday. It's for the Spanish and the Catalan government, I think now, hopefully, to sit down and find a way forward here.
I obviously condemn any violence anywhere. Yesterday's scenes were unedifying, but clearly this is a matter for Spain, for the Spanish people, for the Spanish government, for the Catalonians to resolve within Spain.
Supporters of a Catalan state believe they have taken a step towards their goal. Independence could be declared in the coming days. The UK and Scottish governments, Jackie, now find themselves split on this issue, with Nicola Sturgeon voicing her support for the right of the Catalan people to decide their future, while the UK government has emphasised its support for the constitution and the unity of its ally Spain. And indeed, at this stage, it seems like the Catalan government is losing the early parts of the diplomatic battle with the European Commission, emphasising unity over division. Nonetheless, it's hard to see, now that the vote has taken place, how the clock can be turned back. And after the police violence on these very streets just a few hours ago, people here are apprehensive about what happens next.
Niall, thank you very much. Images have been released of 4 men police want to trace over the alleged chanting of a sectarian song during an Orange Order march through Glasgow. The Scottish Conservative leader has urged her party to man up and get over its leadership crisis. Ruth Davidson was speaking at the UK conference in Manchester, where the Scottish Secretary, David Mundell, said the SNP should rule out a second independence referendum altogether. Here's our political correspondent, Nick Eardley.
Together we save the Union!
A rare burst of emotion, not something we see often from this Prime Minister, but a Scottish gathering is one of the few places she can claim success. Elsewhere at conference, that's a much harder sell. This could be a make-or-break conference for Theresa May. She's facing continued pressure over her leadership and the future direction of the party, but it's the result in Scotland that's providing one of the rare glimmers of hope. And some are looking to Ruth Davidson for inspiration. They think she could help revitalise the party.
I don't think the party needs saving. I think it needs to get over its current nervous breakdown and man up a little bit.
Will you ever run for the leadership of the Tory party?
I honestly can't see it. Honestly can't.
The Scottish Secretary thinks success in Scotland is the only reason Jeremy Corbyn isn't Prime Minister, and he thinks pressure can stop something else too. Nicola Sturgeon has put independence on the back burner. He wants her to go further.
It's time Nicola Sturgeon ruled out a second independence referendum clearly and unambiguously, so that Scotland can get on with what really matters.
The Chancellor also reckons the new Scottish MPs are making their presence felt.
Re-establishing an assertive Scottish Conservative voice. As Chancellor, I have already found out just how assertive that voice is.
What are you fighting for in the budget?
Well, you have to wait and see. We're very clear what delivering for Scotland looks like. We have a range of things that we're looking to lobby the Chancellor on.
If we don't know what you're asking for, how do we know if you've been successful?
Well, we've set a very clear set of objectives. I mean, the Scottish Conservative manifesto had some key delivery promises in it. We'll be tested against those.
That budget next month, then you can judge success in what Scottish Tory gains deliver. Nick Eardley reporting Scotland at the Conservative Party conference in Manchester.
Well, our political editor Brian Taylor is also in Manchester. Brian, David Mundell also urging the Scottish Government to work with him on the very contentious issue of powers returning from the EU. Is he optimistic of a deal?
He certainly sounded optimistic, Jackie. He referred to it in his speech. He described the proposals being put forward by the UK government as common sense. I have to say they're not seen as that by the Scottish government. Remember, this is the 111 powers identified that are returning from the European Union to the UK, but 111 of those powers are in areas of existing devolved power like agriculture, justice, fisheries, etc. And it's suggested by the Scottish Government those should go straight to Edinburgh and they could then discuss at what point there needs to be some form of sharing across the UK. The talks are still going on, talks again due to resume fairly shortly. But one sort of framework that's been suggested to me is that there could be a calculation of the proportionality or the salience of individual powers to work out which should go to Edinburgh and which should perhaps be shared. There could then be money accompanying any transfer of responsibility to match the added responsibility that there would be on the Scottish Government. And crucially, there could be a role for the Scottish Government in those powers which remain at a UK level. I gather that is still contentious, frankly, even within the UK Government. I have to say that is still a framework. It's not an offer, but it's a possible framework for the negotiations as they go forward. The Scottish Government doesn't recognise that approach and does not endorse that approach. They are saying that what should happen is the powers should go to Edinburgh and then they could talk. But the negotiations, as I say, continue and the Prime Minister is likely to become involved again.
Brian, thank you. The captain of a Royal Navy nuclear-armed submarine has been relieved of his command as an investigation gets underway into allegations that he had an inappropriate relationship with a female member of his crew. Some operations have been cancelled at the Highlands' largest hospital today due to an IT blackout. NHS Highlands says staff at Raigmore are having to rely largely on paper-based systems after computer servers in the building's basement were flooded. Health bosses are advising the public to attend the hospital as planned unless contacted to advise of an alternative arrangement. The building that houses Glasgow's Burrell collection is undergoing refurbishment, and today it received £15 million from the Heritage Lottery Fund towards the project. There has been no doubt today we've had a taste of autumn, and with it the start of the annual problem for Scotland's railways. Football, and there's a big week ahead for the Scotland team. If they beat Slovakia and Slovenia, they're guaranteed second in their World Cup qualifying group. And still with football, less than 24 hours after Kilmarnock parted ways with its manager Lee McCulloch, the club say they've had over 20 applications for his job. One of the world's rarest and most expensive single malt whiskies has gone on sale. The flagpole, which has been at Edinburgh Castle for more than 50 years, has snapped in. Now a reminder of tonight's main news. At least 58 people have died and more than 500 have been injured in a mass shooting in Las Vegas. The gunman, Stephen Paddock, was a 64-year-old living in a retirement village and unknown to police. And that's Reporting Scotland. I'll be back with the headlines at 8 and the late bulletin, which is just after the 10 o'clock news.